So we have a really hot topic in store for this video. We are going to learn to do cut and paste. So I know you're all excited about this topic, cut and paste. It's fantastic college course. We're going to learn to do cut and paste. Okay, so let me clarify a little bit what I mean. We are not going to do Control-C, Control-V or equivalent, okay? We are going to just use the cut and paste tools, command line tools, from the bash shells of the Linux environment. Okay, so we do have a command named cut and we have a command named paste. And just like the other filters we are studying in this module, they are meant to operate on text files. So we are going to go fish our good old example text file. Here we have two of them. Okay, we have employee.db and employee2.db. That is exactly the same thing, but I change a field separator from a space in employee.db to a colon on employee2.db. Okay, just so that I could illustrate how those different filters we are studying are capable to adapt and change their delimiters, the delimiter they use to separate the fields. Okay, so let's take a look at what we can do with those cut and paste commands. So big spoiler, cut is going to allow us to extract information, cut it out of the file, and paste is going to allow us to actually combine things that have been maybe previously cut. Okay, so it's kind of intuitive. So let's take a look at this. So the first option that I want to introduce with cut is going to be probably the one that has the most of a niche application. Okay, we can cut data out of a file by specifying character columns that we want to cut. So cut means extract, okay, in this context. So I have my file here with multiple fields every line. So let's say that I want to only extract, cut out of the file, you know, the first column of data. So with this option, we would have to specify actually a range of characters. So the counting starts at 1. Okay, so this is character 1 here, that's 0. Then I have character 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's supposed to be a social security number, so it has 9 digits. So with the C option, I can specify column numbers starting at 1. I can specify ranges, I can specify lists. So let's have a look at the most basic thing I can do, which is specify cut character 1. Well, as you would have guessed, it's just taking every line and cutting out of the line and displaying in its output, you know, the first character of that line. So now I could go back here and say, well, this is not exactly what I want. You know, I want the full social security number. So can I do multiple characters? Can I cut multiple characters out of a line? Of course. So you can specify a list of characters like 1, 2, 3, separated by comma, no spaces. Be careful, okay? So if you do that, guess what? This is just working fine. This is cutting the first 3 characters, okay? And then maybe I want the last 4 characters of the social security number as well. So that would be 1, 2, 3 as the first 3, 4, 5 as the middle one, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 6, 7, 8, 9. And now, sorry, I'm going to get the first 3 characters and the last 4 characters. So you can verify, I'm going to leave it on the screen, you can verify that this is exactly what we cut out of each line of the file. So cut applies to each line, just like every filter does. Okay, every filter is meant to work line per line on its input and produce an output that is each line processed. And in this case, the processing is just extracting some specific characters in this case. So this is nice, but if we have a lot of characters to specify, maybe we need a notation that is a little smarter. So here we go, a little more concise. We can specify ranges of character. Okay, so in this example, I did exactly the same thing. Okay, the first 3 characters and then characters 6 to 9 included. So you see that the extremity of the range are included always. And we do the dash, again, no space between the digits and the comma and dashes. And that allows us to specify a bunch of ranges like so. Okay, so this is convenient, and that could be all we need. And except that this first field is very nice. It's very nice because it has a fixed width all over the file. So always the same number of characters to represent in every line a social security number. Let's talk a little bit about extracting, this field, the clearance field. Okay, so we know that this is character 9, so we're talking about 10. So 11 is where we start the clearance field, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay, the longest one seems to go up to 24. So we are talking about 11 to 24, if I didn't mess that up. Let's see. We're going to say I want to extract 11 to 24. And it's nice. Okay, it kind of works. Except for the H here that is dangling and the L here, and this is just because that field in the text file doesn't have a fixed width. Okay, sometimes it's taking a little bit more character to express, for example, a full clearance than it does to take to express a no clearance information. So as soon as we are in that situation, extracting characters like that, character range, is not going to work. So it's either you have a text file that has been formatted, okay, carefully, so that you have every column every field of information, starts as a specified column, ends at a specific column, every time, every line, or you have like this kind of messy character text file, where you do not have specific column number for each field. All you have is a separator, in this case, a white space, okay? So if you are in that situation, the -C option is not really great. Okay, so let's explore other option. The way for you to specify fields as opposed to specifying character is to use option F. And as we have seen with other filters, the numbering starts at 1. We still have that ability, to specify a list of fields that we want to cut out of each line. We can specify also ranges. We're going to play with that in a second. But even more important, even more interesting, we can specify a delimiter. So a delimiter, a separator, different filters, use different terminology to refer to that. This is the character that is going to separate one field from another. So in the employees.db file, this is a single space. So we put here a single space, okay, -d single space, and I single quote it to neutralize it in case it would be a meta character. In this case, not really useful. And then I say, well, now that I've defined what the separator is expected to be, Cut can look at this file in terms of fields, and I want you to extract fields 1 to 2 included. So in this case, I am getting the social security number and the security clearance of our employee. Okay, easy peasy. If I wanted to do, for example, 1 and 3, no problem. Okay, so this time I'm saying that I want the first field, which is social security number, and then I want the salary column. Okay. So different things like that we can do to specify different fields, as long as we make sure that we use the right delimiter. So we're going to come back on the issue of the delimiter, but at this point, some of you might be wondering why we are not simply doing things like -d space -f. So we did, things like I want field 1 and 3, and from this file. Okay. Now, what about doing the opposite? 3, 1. Okay, same thing. So you do not permutate the columns with cut. The syntax here is really there to just tell Cut which column you want to extract in the original file. But this is still column 1, so when you extract it from the line, automatically you put it at the beginning of your output line. Then you skip column 2 in the file, right? And then column 3 comes after column 1, so when you instruct Cut to extract it, no matter how you instructed it, in what order you specify that column, all it understands is, okay, you want column 1 and 3, and I'm not going to change their order considering the original file. They are going to be in the same order than in the original file. So that's kind of a little counterintuitive maybe for some of you. If you try to play with ranges like we've done in the past, for example, 1, 3 would not make sense, but 1, 2 means I cut only the two first columns, okay? So what happens if you try to do 2-1? Well, logically, right, the cut utility doesn't care about order, so it's going to tell you what? A decreasing range? I don't deal with that, okay? So if you specify a list, the order in which you name the fields in the list doesn't matter. All that matters is, okay, what are the fields you want me to extract? Okay, that's how cut is thinking. When you specify a range, you have to be careful to always have an increasing range, otherwise it doesn't make sense actually for the cut utility. Okay, so this is a little bit of a caveat here. No, nothing really tremendous, nothing like really dangerous, but worth mentioning. Another thing that we are going to mention now is, so what happened with that business of delimiters? Employees.db is using spaces as delimiters, and employees2.db is using colons. So what would happen if I specify the wrong delimiter? So I use the file employees.db, but I specify here that my delimiter is expected to be a colon, and I say extract, for example, 1 and 3. So that's a problem. What's happening here is that cut, if you look at the original file, okay, cut was instructed to look out for a colon as delimiter in order to recognize fields 1 and 3. It looks at the first line, okay, and it doesn't find any delimiter. And there triggers a default behavior that you really have to be aware of. If cut is looking at one line and doesn't find the delimiters that you mentioned in your command line in that line, then it's going to just not process that line at all. But instead of ignoring it, it puts it in its output. So that could be useful if you had, for example, a comma-separated file with values 1, 2, 3 on the first line, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 2, 4, sorry, on the second line, 5, 6, 7 on the third line, and then you add a comment like this is almost the end of the file, and then you have another series of comma-separated value, each standing on their lines, on their own line. Well, in that case, I guess the idea behind this weird behavior is that cut would still show on the output the comment lines. Okay, so that can be useful. That can get in your way if you don't know to start off with that this is a default behavior. So in this case, we have another option that I need to mention at this point, which allows you to kind of counterbalance that behavior. It's a -s option, which stands for suppress. So with the suppress option, you are telling cut, well, if you just so happen to find a line that doesn't have any of those delimiters, right, just ignore it. So let's take an example of this. Okay, we're going to use employee2. So we use that colon thing here, the colon separator. So I'm going to say, all right, I want to cut colon 1 and 3 out of employee2. But then in the middle here, I'm going to say, hey, this is a comment in my data file. Okay, save this. I apply cut again to the same file, and you see that behavior. Okay, it has been doing its job perfectly, but when it encounters a line that it considers not to be part of the data because it doesn't have field separator, then it just keeps it. And obviously, if we don't want that, then we need to use -s. Okay, so again, when I covered the syntax for those filters, I don't try to cover all the options. This is what the main page is for. This is why you have access to main page, and you are very, very, very strongly encouraged to read them, to know a little bit what options are available before exam time, for example. But at the same time, I want to go over the one that can be potentially tricky, the first time you learn about, for example, the cut filter. So there we go. We have pretty much in a nutshell here the overview of the main feature of the cut utility. Now we're going to move on to paste. So I told you that we're going to do cut and paste. So here is information about the paste filter. So the paste filter, as you guess, generally is used in conjunction with cut. Okay, you're going to see that they have a good synergy together. The paste filter does the opposite of cut. So to best illustrate what paste does, I should start by doing a cut of my employee.db file, okay? And I'm going to cut the field 1, from employee.db, and I'm going to put that into a field1.db file. Okay, so let's take a look, make sure that we cut that correctly. Yeah, it's just the social security number. Okay, actually, you know what? Let's call it with something that makes a little bit more sense. ssn.db, social security number. All right. So then we're going to do the same thing here with field number 2, and field number 2 is our security clearance, right? Security.db. And then field number 3 will be our salary information. So salary, is that salary.db. All right, and now we should have a social security column that has been extracted in its own field, a security clearance column in its own field, and a salary column that has been extracted in its own file. I think I kept saying field instead of file. Sorry about that. So each of the columns has been extracted in its own file. Security.db, salary.db, ssn.db. So now we can start talking about paste. So paste, as you might have guessed, is going to allow us to take two files that represent two columns of information and reconstitute a single file that is a multi-column file. Okay? So for example, I can say, now that I extracted each column in its own file, I want to paste together, for example, let's say the salary and the social security number. And the output of paste is, okay, I'm going to take, so, hold on, let me preface this with something. I'm assuming that my data is correct, okay? Meaning that all of those files, salary, SSN, and security, they actually represent different information for each line for the same employee. Okay, so I need to have the same number of lines in each file. So if I have, like in this case, I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 employees, right? So the first line of the first file is the information for that employee, the first employee. So that's the salary for employee number 1. This is the SSN for employee number 1, okay? And if I look into the security file, the first line has to be the security clearance for employee number 1. Okay, so you have to keep the order here, and each of the line needs to correspond to one another in those files. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense, right, to paste those two columns next to next. It makes sense only if this information and this information are for the same employee. So the funny thing that we just did here, without even making a big fuss about it, is that we pretty much reordered column, right? We cut the 3 columns of our original file, we put them in different files, and now with paste, we can reconstitute pretty much the full data of our original file, but by specifying the order in which we want the column to be pasted, we can reorder the column of our original file. Okay, so this is something that you're going to see as a base use case for cut and paste. Okay, you have a file with, for example, comma delimited fields. You want to take those fields, remove some of the fields, reorder the fields that you keep. Well, you would use the cut and paste utility in combination with one another. Okay. One more thing I need to comment on paste. You see that here, paste by default use what appears to be a tab, okay, to separate the field. So that might be what you want, no problem. Maybe you just want, a space. So again, the -D option, D stands for delimiter, is going to allow you, well, I don't want to use the tab, I want to use the space instead, or any other symbol that you want. So we can go back to our good old colon, okay? Additionally, there is another trick to the syntax. If you have, like for example here, we have 3 columns, okay, of data, 3 fields that we are pasting together. So we are going to use 2 separators. So we could specify, okay, my first separator is a space, right? And then my second separator is going to be a column. So I did put space and column here as a delimiter option. So more than one delimiter. And here's what's going to happen. Paste is going to be smart enough to say, okay, so my first delimiter is going to be the space because you put a space here first. And then when I need another delimiter, I'm going to look at what you specified here. And hey, you have a column, so I'm going to use a column. And if we had multiple columns and the need for multiple separator, we could specify as many as we want. Okay, no problem there. So that's it in a nutshell. That's the cut and paste filters. And keep in mind, as any other filter, you can use them obviously in pipelines and redirection. So, for example, even though it's not very greatly useful, you could say I'm going to cut employee.db through a cut of the first field using delimiter space, something like that, right? And that would work just fine. So that's the main thing. I'm not going to necessarily repeat it for every filter, but the point of all those filters is that they can operate on files that you specify on the command line, but they can also operate on their standard input. So if you redirect the output of one filter or one command to the input of a filter, then it's going to work on that input and it's going to spit out, as output, the result of this combination. For example, to make that obvious, I could say, hey, I want the first two columns, and then maybe I want to cut that further by removing, by keeping, just the second column. All right, and dash d blah blah, and there we go. So it's kind of like stupid because I could have cut directly the second column from the original file, but I'm just trying to illustrate how you can combine in a pipeline, all of those filters. And there we go. We covered, I would say, 90% of cut and paste on the Linux command line with the cut and paste command.